Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Classroom, a Stanford podcast, the show that aims to give you a dose of inspiration and insight into the future of international education and keeps you in the know of everything going on here at Stamford American International School in Singapore. I'm your host, James Bennett, Head of Communications here at Stanford. Our guest today is Shane Malone, Head of Outdoor Education here at Stanford. All right. Hi, Shane. How you doing today?
Hi, James. Yeah, I'm good. I'm actually finalising some of the grade 3 work that we're doing in the next couple of weeks, as well as our PCS trips over to Bangkok soon.
Got some trips coming up. All right.
Yeah, it's exciting. We're nearly at the end of the year, but we still have around 3 or 4 major trips to finalise the year before we begin again in September.
Okay. What happens in September?
Well, we've got the high school trips, and that is the new vamped section for our grade 11 and 12s, which I think we can get into a little bit, as well as our 9s and 10s completing their MYP connection transformative trips to Chiang Mai and to Cambodia.
Wow.
Yeah.
A lot of cool places that you guys are going to.
Yeah, it's exciting.
That sounds fun. Hey, so tell me a little bit about field studies in general. Like, how does it fit in with the school? How does it fit in with the curriculum? I know that we try to provide a holistic education to students.
Yeah.
Where does that fit?
So the way to look at field studies, it's sequential. We're looking at a program that's running basically an overnight from grade 2 all the way through to grade 12. And what we're looking at is experiential transformative learning experiences that is really appropriate for the age and stage of the student. So at grade 2 level, we're introducing some things. We're getting them comfortable away from mum and dad for an overnight on campus, all the way up to grade 12, where we are doing a multi-day trek experience in the Himalayas, where students are spending around 7 full days moving through the Mardi Himal trek. So it's a journey that encompasses basically improvement of skill throughout the time that they're at the school. And we can drop in and out of different grade levels and then try out. If you were to join the school in grade 7, it doesn't mean that you can't join in. It's designed for you at that age.
Okay, so there's an overnight for grade 2s.
Yeah. So
wow.
It starts
Tell me about
as
that.
simple as you stay in school one night.
Yeah.
We work out a little camp dinner.
Okay.
We can order in some pizza. We can do some art activities. We can get on the climbing wall. And then we go back up to air-conditioned space, but we set up some tents.
Yeah.
And we get some fairy lights out and we make it exciting. And we have our classes do a class sleepover just on campus.
Okay.
Nice and simple, but it gets them exposed to, first of all, can I do this away from mum and dad? Can I get myself ready for bed? Am I able to get up the next day and get myself dressed and ready for school?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Are parents a little hesitant to allow their children to do that?
Absolutely. I mean, we're still recovering from the pandemic. It's a big step for a lot of parents to do any of these trips, especially at that age. I've got young children. She's not done a sleepover yet. She's not grade 2, but it's a scary prospect. But that's what's important. That's where growth happens.
Yeah. I've got a grade 1, so I would be a little hesitant as well. She barely sleeps outside of my bed. I can't even imagine her sleeping, somewhere totally different. So they start from grade 2 all the way to grade 12. Kind of tell me a little bit more about how that holistic education comes into play.
So here at Stanford, we're really focused on the whole child. Academic rigour is absolutely important. We are a school who wants to produce good results for our families and our students and get them to the next stage beyond grade 12 and beyond Stanford. But that being said, there's so many more parts to development than just grades. So we can focus in on service. We can focus in on how a student's mental and emotional state is developing at different key stages in their lives. We can focus in on global issues to try and give our students real, genuine context of what's happening in the world, and then they can bring it back to that conceptual learning model and the inquiry model that they do in classes. So what we can provide is that experiential model that they can then bring back to the class and say, hey, I just learned something about this. What can I now do with this? How has this shaped my thinking? Where might I go next with my learning? So it just gives us that space to take a step back from the day-to-day classroom model and really experience something that is completely left field.
Oh, yeah, very cool. So they're really learning kind of how to be adults, how to be humans, basically.
Yeah, how
not
to be
just
humans.
the academics.
Yeah,
right?
It's not about being an adult. It's a lot of this is play.
Yeah.
Like we're learning how to be children again sometimes, and how our social structures work in a space of young people all together.
Okay, so I know you had a recent trip to Cambodia, or I guess it was in October, right?
Yeah, so our high school trips, one of them, we head out to Cambodia with grade 10s. That was the end of October. So that was our first round of this academic year.
Okay, very cool. So tell me a little bit about that trip. Like, what kind of, where did the kids go? What did they do? What happened there?
So we split our grade levels in two often because of the size of the grade level. We don't want a mass amount of students moving through a community because that has an impact in itself. So that you'll see that across a lot of our trips. So one of our groups fly into Siem Reap and the other one fly into Phnom Penh. The Siem Reap group immediately head up to an area called Battambang, and the Phnom Penh group go to Kampot. To give you a bit more detail, I think I could focus in on that Battambang area and just give you an overview of that trip.
Okay.
So the students in the INS classes are looking at genocide, they're looking at peace and reconciliation, they're looking at what has happened in history, how humans get to that stage, what were the affecting factors, what went wrong, what needs to change in the future, what are some warning signs, etc.
Yeah.
So they do that in class, and then they're getting to go and experience this as part of their trip. It's very much designed so that they can go and see the real world application of what has happened. And we don't keep it all doom and gloom, sorry.
Yeah.
It is really based on that peace and reconciliation. How does a country post-genocide get to the stage of development and move things forward?
Yeah.
Now, Cambodia is still very early in that space, but they are getting to see what's happening in these smaller communities as well as the larger city spaces in Siem Reap, and what's going on. So they do a few key visits and excursions when they're in Battambang, one being the Far Circus School. So this is actually a school that developed from one of the camps during the Khmer Rouge regime, where the people there were looking to be connected to one another and maintain their culture. And a big part of that was through dance and circus skills and music. Oh. And they were then building this circus, this troupe of people to keep themselves mentally and emotionally stable during those times. Right. That has developed into then a school program in Battambang, where they have the FAR group is what they're called. And this is a group who students are able to come in and work on these skills to a professional level and then move on to the larger groups in Siem Reap and Phnom Penh and really set themselves up for a career path. You would see some of these performers in the Cirque du Soleil style setup. It's very impressive. So our students get to go and spend around 2 days in that school, 1 day doing workshops and learning alongside the students who are learning at the same age. And then they spend another day and it's a more social situation where they're having a barbecue with the students, but they're also invited to the circus tent and they get a full performance in that evening, and that closes off the trip. Another section of the trip, we have a cycling day where students are going from small business household to small business household and checking out how do the locals live, work, and what their economic situation is looking like. And they get some storytelling, and I think that's one of the most wonderful part of this trip is the storytelling elements. They get to hear what does that day-to-day look like, where does the money come from, how do they get it from nothing to market, and then what's the stages in between. And it's as simple as rice paper or how they would do dried bananas and so on. The last main experience I would say where they're getting to explore the culture would be when it does start to get a bit gritty. They do a hike with one of the local guides whose family was majorly affected within the regime. And he tells the story as he moves through this hike up to what they call their killing caves. And there's story points along the way of the monastery and how that was a prison, to where they host all the bones of the unknown people that were killed during the regime, as well as showing them the caves and spaces in which executions took place. So it takes them through some real difficult situations, but also shows more so what are people doing to get beyond this? How are we moving forward as a society? And I think when I look at some of the quotes coming out of that is really impactful.
Yeah. Can you share one with me? Would you mind?
Yeah, I've got one right here. So this is a grade 10 student when they come back. So one of the things we do is we collect surveyed information before and after the trip, as well as some testimonials. So this is just one from one particular student. I know more about Cambodian history, and I learned that I am actually good at some of the parts from the art school, like dancing, playing instruments, and circus. But to me, that's not what was important. It was about hearing the real life stories from the guides and the cycling company that gave me a true picture of what life must have been like at that time.
That's a pretty impactful quote.
Yeah, and this is it. We're genuinely exposing students to what happened in real life situations. And it's not coming from a textbook. It's coming from that primary source and seeing it with their own eyes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the transformative piece that we cannot get in a school classroom.
Right. I mean, they read about it in the classroom, but you actually bring it to life in these like field studies and these treks.
And the joy of what that grade 10 do is they bring it back and they do some summative graded work on it, but they can use all that experience within the work that they're completing.
Right. I mean, they get such an experience. They embrace the culture, the new culture. They get to learn a little bit about business, about how these people are surviving and kind of running their own businesses. And then they get, the stories that come along with it. That's pretty impactful, holistic experience for them. So tell me a little bit about what's coming up. I know that you're constantly making changes. You're constantly improving things with the program. Could you tell us any kind of changes that are coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. We are in recovery mode, and I think all schools lost the ability to travel during the pandemic, but we're at a stage where we're getting very excited about our grade 11 and 12 shift. We took the feedback from the community based on what they wanted moving forward, and we've placed it into a space where students are going to select their own adventure, very much based on both the service requirements and potentially the CAS requirements if they're a full IBDP student. So what they get to do is choose one of 7 experiences that connect specifically to one of the pillars of service and CAS. And then really go into a smaller group, rich experience where they're going to places like Phuket to do a photojournalism experience, or they're getting to go back to Vietnam if they've not been before, and really get into an activity-based space where they're going on longer hikes, longer cycling experiences, really exposing themselves to a culture. Or we can look at service in Phetchaburi, where we're working with NGOs and elephant conservation societies. So these students are getting to do really 2 things: select it based on what is socially a need for them, who are the people they want to be spending time with and really going deep into a topic with, and it's a launch pad for their CAS requirements or their service requirements in grade 11 and 12.
Yeah. And these kids are out there sometimes sleeping in tents, right? Mm-hmm. Without technology.
Yes.
Right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
I think I remember hearing that. You have to have some challenges, I assume, with that.
Yeah.
How do you overcome those?
This is where learning is. Things are hard. Life is hard. Yeah. And we put ourselves in hard situations so we can get better. The interesting part is when you look at feedback after trips, they always mention the phones. We don't have our phones, we don't have our laptops, and it makes us feel uncomfortable. But, and then the but is always around, I socially got to connect with more of my classmates. I got deeper in conversations with the friends that I already have. We did hard things together and we learned stuff because of it. We came back to school feeling more connected as a Stamford community, and that's really what we're trying to build up into that grade 11 and 12 space. It will be difficult, but it will also be excellent learning so that they can then bring that back socially, emotionally, and academically, and really thrive during their senior years here.
Yeah, you're really tapping into that human element, and you're making those human connections. Yeah, because sometimes when you have to remove technology to kind of more humanize yourself sometimes. Yeah. I think a lot of the teachers could probably learn from that when they go on the trips as well.
Oh, absolutely. We'll get there one day.
I know us adults can definitely learn from that. All right. Well, Shane, thank you so much for sharing your insights on field studies and the impact here it's making at Stanford. It's clear all these experiences are really playing a vital role in providing our students with holistic education, improving them and making them better people when they come into Stanford and before they leave us.
Thank you, James.
And going on to make a better world, of course.
Oh, absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you for having me today.
Pleasure's all on this side of the table. Appreciate it, Shane. Well, everybody, that's Shane Malone. He is the head of outdoor education. I'm James Bennett, the head of communications here, and this is Beyond the Classroom, a Stanford podcast. Thank you so much for listening today. Be sure to add us to your episodes on Spotify and give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and all the other socials. Until then, take care, and we'll see you next time. Beyond the Classroom is sponsored by Sodexo. Sodexo is a company that provides catering, facilities management, and serves more than 10,000 meals daily. Sodexo is a market leader for providing food services to international schools in Singapore. At Sodexo, we're creating a better every day for everyone.